everyone to today's Regulatory Processes Committee meeting. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed. Please let me or Officer Johnson know if you intend to leave the meeting. And there will be a morning tea at 10:30 if we're still going at that stage, but I don't think that's likely to happen, but one never knows. Okay, we have an apology for lateness from Amir Foster. I move that the committee accepts the apology from Amir Foster. Seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Free, thank you. Put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Please vote accordingly. That is carried. I call on members to declare any conflicts of interest they may have in relation to any item on the agenda. Okay. Confirmation of minutes. I move that the Regulatory Processes Committee approves the minutes from the meeting held on the 14th of October. They be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Can I have a seconder, please? Preferably someone who's read them. Thank you, Councillor Wolfe. Put the motion. It's been moved and seconded. Please vote accordingly. Thank you. That is carried. There are no items not on the agenda. And we, in terms of public participation, I'd like to welcome to the table Paul Clark. Have a seat at the end here. Paul, you have 5 minutes speaking to us on traffic resolution TR1-2920, which is Onslow Road. So over to you, and as we mentioned, if you allow within your 5 minutes time for questions. Over to you.
Greetings, councillors. The reason I'm here, councillors, is because I think an important principle is that residents should be able to live in their houses without having to break the law. And unfortunately, the council will now be putting me in a position where I will not be able to live in my house without breaking the law occasionally. If you look at the piece of paper I've submitted, you'll see there's a yellow line that shows the proposed no parking area for the council. Now, I'm resident at 151, which is the grey house at the top of the corner. And you'll note that there are two lines. There's a little red line and a little yellow wavy line. The yellow wavy line is a fairly gentle access which I can use to take large items, things like furniture. If I visit the hardware store, I can park my trailer there and unload sheets of jib, all of which I've had to do. The red line is the other access, and the problem with it is too tight and steep, and quite frankly, to carry heavy objects, you're going to injure yourself. It's not physically possible. So if I visit the hardware store, I have to, say, hook a trailer up, which is typical, and park outside where the top of that yellow wavy line is and then unload it, which is exactly where the council's going to have no parking. Now, it's not every day we do these things, but it does happen occasionally. Another issue is when you get tradies arrive. For instance, scaffolding. I have to have scaffolding put up every 3 to 4 years. This year, repainting, rotting windows, pipe work where needed scaffolding to access, and all of which requires tradesmen to park and unload. Now, the problem I have with this is having a blanket no parking line means I cannot physically get things in and out of my property when I need to. And I'm not talking about every day, we're just talking a very occasional use. The other issue I have with this is that the proposed location doesn't make sense, because if you have a look at the pink line where the footpath is, you'll see that that whole area has trees and it's a dirt bank, so there's no physical access. So what the bureaucrat from the council said was, we're going to allow people to alight on the footpath there and fine. But the problem is no one's going to be stopping their car there anyway because it's a dirt bank. The only access to those houses you can see on the top corner of the photograph is further down the road out of the picture. So if you're wanting to deal with the issue of not having cars parked on both sides of the road, it would make a lot more sense to put the no parking where the pink line is. So that's what I would suggest. But be honest, councillors, I mean, I did suggest having a loading zone, maybe a park 30 or something like that, but it's not really fair to put me in a position where when I visit the hardware store or whatever and I have to take a trailer or have a couch or something, I can't now physically get it in and out because that yellow wavy line is the only access I have for heavy items. So, I mean, that's basically what I want to say, councillors, and I just think it's really unfair to put people in a position where they can't satisfactorily live at their house.
Thank you for that, Paul. Do we have any questions from councillors? Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, Paul. Thank you for coming to talk to us today. I was just wondering if you've given this feedback to the officers. You said that you've
Yes, I did, and basically they told me to get stuffed. Well, they didn't say it in the letter, but effectively what they said, if you read what they sent, they said, we understand your concerns, but we're going to be doing it anyway. So that's why I'm here, because they said they acknowledge the problem, but they're not prepared to deal with it. And as I said, I agree they shouldn't have parking there, but you have to allow a situation where people who live in an area can actually unload things to and from their house occasionally. And the current situation where there's no parking line there, no lines there, I can park a trailer occasionally, or a van needs to unload something, it can be done. So that's all I'm really asking, that some provision be made where I don't have to worry about some council officer coming up and issuing me for parking ticket, or tradie says, I'm not prepared to do the job at that house because I can't park outside to unload something.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Free.
It's not entirely clear what's going on with the driveway. Are you ever able to use the
driveway is the problem is on someone else's property.
Right.
They obviously have cars parked. You've got 3 houses which use that driveway. There's two in the there's actually all 3. 1, 2, 3, they all use that driveway for access, and there's also a set of very steep stairs between the driveway and the house. So essentially I'd have to ask other people to move their cars off their own property area and to have to carry things about 3 to 4 metres up a steep lot of stairs. So I don't think that would work, Councillor.
Okay, thank you for Paul. We will certainly be asking officers questions when this comes up on the when this comes up later. We will pursue it further. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors.
Right. I must admit to a small oversight on my part. We did not start with the Karakia, so we are going to stand and do the Karakia right now. Thank you for pointing it out to me, team. Rightio. Hey. Taka taka te hau ki te tonga.
Kia mā kina
I uta.
Kia mā taratara i tai. He hi ake ana takura.
he tio he
uka.
ti hei mā.
Thank you. Okay, moving into general business. Item 2.1 on your agenda, page 7. The name for the new road off Spenmoor Street in Newlands. I'd like to invite Officers Carleen Thomas and Michael Brownie to the table for any questions. And at the outset, I'm going to ask Carleen, we have had a further comment from the developer, just elaborating a little on his request for the specific place name. So, Carleen, could you just read that out, please?
Certainly. This was received after the paper was written. The developer has made the comment that this is the second to last street and all the other streets have aircraft names already. The development is situated right under the airport glide path and has views direct to the airport, so aviation theme seems appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for officers on this one? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. Just one quick question. So in the paper it says committee members can direct officers to consult with Mana Whenua Baia, Te Pūtama and iwi Partnerships team if they would so choose, though. But my understanding that happened already. I know that we've spoken with, or there's a note in there from Te Reo Tama, but our mana whenua are not always approached for new names.
Te Reo Tama is always approached to ask for their feedback, yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
So they have the option then, if they perceive it necessary, to approach mana whenua, looking at best use of time.
Ah, yeah. And in this paper, they still felt that Boeing was the good name, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this, as we read in the papers, is in keeping with the theme in the area. At least 6 roads or rights of way have aircraft names, and this is a private right of way that will be maintained by the owners. Therefore, in the circumstances, it's not necessarily unreasonable to allow the developer to have a substantial say on the naming of it. And seeing we've got plenty of time on our hands, I'll just quickly say the other street names in the area are Spitfire, Cessna, Piper, Epic, Cirrus. I'm not sure if that's how I pronounce it. Cirrus or Cyrus? Cirrus. And is it Grumman or Grumman? Grumman. And the last 3, I googled them just out of interest, are aircraft manufacturers. So we learn something new every day, because I'd never heard of Grumman or... Right, okay. I am ignorant on some of these matters, and Epic is too. Right, okay. Where are we? I move the motion being the recommendations in the officer's report. A seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Condi. Any debate? Councillor Condi.
Just to say that I think in this case where we've got a theme that's almost complete and it's a private right-of-way, I'm totally happy to be going with the developer's view on this. But as we've said, I feel a bit like a broken record that we do really want more Te Reo Māori names when we're seeing this. And I still feel like, we're not seeing the number coming through that I would like to see. And I think, like I say, in this case, that's fine. And I think we need to maybe... we've already had these conversations with Karipa, and we need to continue to have those conversations at that level to make sure that we're making progress on this in the way that we would like to. So the reason I didn't ask a question about it is because I think you've done an excellent job on this paper, and I didn't really have a question to ask, but just to signal once again that we really do want to see more of those Te Reo Māori names coming in our direction in the future. Kia ora.
Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, just very quickly, I would like to support what Councillor Condi said. And I think it's Councillor Day who says that 12% of our place names are in Te Reo Māori. So if we're going to up that percentage, one of the most obvious ways we can do that is through new naming. And so I'm very keen again. And thanks, officers, for their work. And but keen to see more Te Reo Māori names.
I'll just add a further comment on that. I think that as a matter of course, Te Reo names will be given primary consideration, but there will be other considerations, and this is one of those where, in keeping with the theme in the area, but as a matter of course, I expect that we will be seeing considerably more Te Reo names for street names. Okay. I'll put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. Please vote. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, officers. Item 2.2 on the agenda, page 11. This is proposed road closures. We're inviting to the table... Yep, Sean Woodcock. Welcome, Sean. I'll just make a comment at the outset that a certain eagle-eyed Councillor Condi spotted that in terms of item 2B, the New Zealand Cycle Classic Stout Street, along which the cycle race takes place, hadn't been included in the public advertising that has taken place, so we're deferring that aspect of the overall motion for 1 month. So any questions on other aspects or on that one for Sean? Deputy Mayor Free.
Just to say, and this isn't really a criticism, but just to say the fact I think that we had to ask for clarification of the race, and where it was going. Maybe that could have been a little bit clearer, because looking at the map, I can see a map, but not terribly much else on it. So, yeah. Okay, thank you. No, that's fine. Happens.
So was that your hand? No, okay. Right. We're deferring that one for a month. As I said, the other events have drawn no objections. Certainly the Island Bay Festival and the Kilburney Christmas Parade are repeat events, all straightforward as I see it. So I move the motion being the recommendations in the officer's report, noting that the road closures for the New Zealand Cycle Classic will be brought back to the December regulatory processes meeting. So actually, let me just backtrack a moment. So there will be further public advertising in regard to including Stout Street. Yep. Okay. I've moved the motion to seconder, please. Councillor Condi, would you like to speak?
Briefly. Just very briefly to say thanks so much to officers for your very quick response. When I raised the question, it was purely out of curiosity that I asked about where the route was going, because I kind of looked at it and thought, oh, where are the bikes going to go? The quick response to that, and then the quick response to the error that was found, I've really appreciated, and the fact that we've been able to tidy it up so quickly. As I said, these things happen to all of us, so I'm just so grateful that it's the pudding right that counts, isn't it, Wellington? And so grateful that it was handled really smoothly and well, so thanks for that.
Yes, my comment, I'd like to say too, thank you for the very appropriate response and rapid response, so it's been handled very well. Any further debate? Okay, put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Please vote accordingly. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Item 2.3 on the agenda, proposed road stopping. It's page 35 if you're following it. Land adjoining 64. Now, we have a Beauchamp Street in Tawa. Is this called local offices at Beauchamp Street in Karori? Is that how the locals say it? Okay. Land adjoining 64 Beauchamp Street, Karori. Sarah Jane and John. Oh, welcome to the table. Any questions from councillors? I know that one concern has been raised from a neighbour, and who will have the opportunity to formally object at the next stage of the process. Is that correct, if she wishes to pursue it?
Yeah, so we asked for all objections in writing. So at the time, I'd only spoken to them on the phone. I have since received an email, so we're just working through that with them now. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Free.
Just have a question in relation to the submission we heard on the Onslow Road, brick and yellow lines. Oh, sorry. Right, I'll hold it. Yep.
Yeah. Councillor Condi.
Can you just tell us very briefly about what the complaint is that we've received?
Yeah, so the concern that we've received at this point in time isn't to do with the road stopping itself. It's with the potential development of a second dwelling on the property, which is covered under the Building and Resource Management Act and not through the road stopping process. So they'd have to seek advice on that further. Yeah.
Could you just walk us through very quickly? This is, if we approve this now, it's going to the next step in the process. Can you just, for the sake of councillors here, just elaborate on the various steps in the overall process and why a neighbour has the opportunity at this stage to have said something, and then again it looks like the process is kind of being repeated. It goes back out to neighbours again.
So sort of nearer the beginning of the process before we come to committee is we send out an initial letter that essentially is more of a heads up. I like to describe it as informally, and it's basically saying this is a proposal that we've put forward. The next step is going to committee where it gets approved or not approved. Following that, we do the survey and then the public notification, which is required under the Local Government Act for the road stopping, and that is when they have the formal opportunity to object in writing, and there's a 40-day period for that, but we like to give people a bit more notice. So that's the initial heads up letter is only sent to like directly affected properties, whereas the public notification is a bit more broad with the newspaper and the signs that go up.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, I move the motion being the recommendations in the officer's report. Seconder, please. Right, Councillor Matthews, would you like to say something? Okay, any debate? Radio, I put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Please vote. Carried unanimously. Thank you, officers. We are about to move to item 2.4, page 43, traffic resolutions, and we have officers are blown away by the fact that we have gotten through the earlier topic so quickly. Yep, quick adjournment. Welcome to the table, Suntik Kong and Charles Kingsford, on the issue of traffic resolution. So we do have a few questions. Councillor Condi.
So can we start with Onslow Road? So we had a public participant here just earlier, and so I think everyone has kind of questions about what could be done to assist this person who wants to be able to unload into their house. And his particular question was about why we're putting the broken yellow lines on this side of the road, and wouldn't it be better to put them on the other side of the road with where the footpath is, where there's no direct access to properties. Can you give us some information about that?
Yeah, thank you. The road width is 5.7 metres. On this stretch, it's from an edge of seal on the side of 151, so there's no formed curb line there, across to the curb on the other side. There's a 1.5 metre footpath on the other side to 151. And okay, there is some shrubbery through there, but there is a footpath. So we always try and keep parking on the footpath side, which makes sense when you're unloading, getting in and out of a vehicle. The passenger can get onto the footpath, and the driver also can walk around and walk down the footpath. This is a high volume road, bus route. There's been 3, not directly outside number 151 where Paul spoke, but in this sort of 200 metre stretch of road, there's been 5 non-injury crashes in the last 5 years. One was a head-on, one was a rear-ender, and the other one was somebody coming out of the driveway. So there's a little bit of activity there, but no serious. To put a loading zone outside his property for a short time period isn't something we would do in a residential area. That's obviously for commercial shopping areas where we have a regular higher volume of loading and unloading, as you can expect. So we're not looking to put a loading zone or a short-term parking spot outside his property.
Did anyone else have questions about Onslow Road before I move on?
Look, it's possibly not a mitigation at all, but I was wondering, having heard from this mitter in person, whether there was any chance to actually just have a break in the dotted yellow lines outside his house, sufficient to park a vehicle. Acknowledging that half the time someone else would probably be in it, not him. But from a safety issue, does that work? And what advice would you give?
Councillor, if I may jump in, or Mayor, is that 151 actually has a garage and area where he can pull off. And as a result, he could actually use it. He could use it as for his tradesperson or whoever and park his car on the other side, and that doesn't mean he cannot use that area for his own use, which is right outside his house and right directly in front. And for us, we're thinking of public transport, the volume of traffic on Onslow Road, and also making sure that when you park a car, you don't end up having to walk around the car and onto the road. So the footpath was the better side of the two options. Was 5.7 is not suitable for parking on both sides, and so that was the rationale for saying, look, that was the site we put the no stopping. Thanks.
When he came and presented to us, he just gave us a map which I can't seem to find, but I got the impression he was drawing his address as being at 149, so it was quite confusing. All right. Thank you.
Your question, Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question around when people are getting work done on their house and say you need a trades vehicle and a landscaping vehicle to come and be at your property. If a resident wanted to have work done and the tradespeople, for their own safety, need to be able to get into that spot is there a process through council by which people can apply for a temporary road closure, or the same way like when we have works done on our roads in Roseneath, we section things off with codes through a consent? Is there, like, what's the pathway for people that want work done?
Well, I guess on a section of road through here where we want to put in broken yellow lines, and then what you're saying, could we put in a temporary traffic management to provide a short parking bay? The owner would have to apply for that, but actually on a no stopping area, it becomes more difficult in terms of safety, but it would be on the owner then to apply for a temporary traffic management system, maybe to bring the road down to definitely to restrict parking on the footpath side and to bring it down to a stop-go sort of arrangement through here. So there would be a cost to the applicant, to the resident, to do this.
Oh, cool.
It's interesting enough, there's only this section of road, if you're looking at our plan, is only 80 to 90 metres long. So we haven't got a lot of room here to allow for a car to overtake a parked car and then get back onto your left-hand side of the road. So it's a particularly narrow stretch of road. Yeah.
Oh, good. I was just preliminary to that. Has this process been kind of communicated back to the person that came to speak to us this morning, just in terms of, say, in a year's time he wants to get something done on his property, that pathway or an application pathway is clear?
We haven't communicated that to him.
Oh, that's good. No, that's good. Thanks, Charles and Ruben. It's very informative.
Yeah, look, just a quick one. So they've got a garage. You said their access, I'm just looking at the Google Earth of it. I mean, basically you've got a fence, a hedge and a drop-off to their property, and on the other side you've got a pretty clear footpath. If they were allowed to park anywhere, presumably you'd be putting vehicles at risk. I mean, no, there isn't. I wouldn't have thought there'd be that many people who'd use that to park on anyway, the side that we're talking about putting broken yellow lines on. In fact, I'd be surprised if people parked on either side, to be honest, most of the time. Well, it's not a road that invites you parking on. Well, it's just not. I mean, how much parking demand actually is there?
I used to live in Renton, Kandala, and I used to travel this road regularly. It's not a high parking demand.
No, I
here.
didn't think there was either.
So on the footpath side, you don't see a lot of parking. I guess the main generator of parking is from the side of 151, because that's where there is access immediately to properties.
Okay. But if you provide for any parking, essentially you compromise. You're making a safety compromise. Full stop, aren't you? That's the issue, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions on Onslow Road, I will ask a question on TR 142, that's Trinidad Crescent. And Bernadette Stahl has communicated with officers and raised various matters. But so I have her questions and concerns been adequately, I was going to say adequately addressed, but I guess you're going to say yes to that. But, well, in specific, she talks about the stop sign, for example, being further back than she thinks it needs to be, and she'll need to stop and then pull forward to the broken white lines and give way. So Actually, that was dealt with earlier, I think, the stop sign. We're not talking about that now, are we? She did ask me to ask questions here as to whether all her various concerns had been adequately addressed. Can you perhaps answer that specifically?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sparrow. We've written about a page officer's response. I actually wrote most of this myself. I believe we have addressed the concerns that she's raised in terms of the previously approved stop control on Trinidad. We've come back and had a second take on this and added some more broken yellow lines on Trinidad on both sides of the road at the intersection. The point she's raised about the stop control and having to move slightly forward over the stop control, well, we haven't actually got the stop control in yet. It is an interesting question. Not a lot of road width through here because of the right turn pockets that have been put in to facilitate improved safety for those right turners to Trinidad and to Guadalupe Crescent. So we are challenged by how far we can bring the continuity, that broken white line forward, and also the stop control. But yes, she's got a point. She has to move slightly forward of the stop control markings I expect when they will be put in, but not a lot. It's a difficult intersection to get out of Trinidad Crescent, and the sight lines are difficult. That's why we are putting in a stop control. It's been already approved. The no stopping is actually improving visibility, access and egress from Trinidad as well.
I expect you are doing the best in the situation, and we're never going to please everyone, and there are many intersections which are far from ideal, but we've just got to do the best we can. Councillor Condi.
Thanks. I've just got a follow-up on Trinidad. One of the submitters, and I can't remember if it was Bernadette Stoll or one of the others, was asking about a roundabout here to make it easier for these people trying to get in and out of these streets. Can you talk about whether the expense of a roundabout would be justified in this intersection based on whatever safety benefits it might deliver?
Yeah, in the officer's response on the second page, page 12, there's a big long paragraph there in terms of roundabout. There's only one reported crash in the last 5 years, non-injury crash. This low level of crash history means the intersection is behaving reasonably well and does not warrant physical improvements such as roundabout. Roundabouts, I'm just reading from the response, but that was carefully written. I think it's the best way to answer your question. Roundabouts are considered on high volume roads where traffic volumes on all approaches are reasonably well balanced, so you do get cars actually pulling up and giving way to the right. And there's a high number of reported crashes. The picture that she drew just showed a blob in the middle of the intersection. If you know the road coming down Mark Avenue from west to east is a downhill slope, you just wouldn't have anybody pulling up to probably give way to those coming out of Guadalupe. So roundabouts do need deflection on the approaches or through the roundabout itself, which means, one, we just can't put a painted circle on the road with give way signs. We do have to put in something physical there. The right turn pockets would have to go, and we'd probably have to put in some central islands there with the give way sign as well. But based on the reasonably low volumes on Trinidad and Guadalupe, no crash history. We believe the intersection is behaving reasonably well at the current time.
Thanks, Charles. Sarah, did you have a follow-up? Does anybody else have questions on Trinidad or?
So thank you, Charles, for looking into some more matters on Hopper Street. You've provided some information that says normally under our parking policy, you've recommended against trying to look into residents' parking in that particular location, but you provided some information about metering and some other kinds of parking, bike parking and the like, that we might normally try to do in a situation like Hopper Street. Could you just outline what your advice actually is now for Hopper Street?
Yeah. Our advice is to go forward with our current proposal with the loading zone and the P30 parking. We did contact the promoter of the petition, the 10 signature petition. He says we've been waiting. I sent through an extract yesterday. He said we've been waiting for a long time. There's a long-term, long-stay parking happening in an area where they want to be able to load and unload. Obviously, it's a loading zone, so that's its primary purpose. The residents' parking, I spoke to Helen Bolton on this and sent you an email, I think. The area is prime for loading zone and short-term parking arrangements. The residents who have asked, I believe, are in an upstairs unit on the Hopper Street service lane, and I expect there it's not an area prime for residential parking in the future. It'll be quite low down the priority list as we move forward on the parking policy priorities.
I suppose because my feeling was maybe this did need a little bit more of a complete holistic look at the street. So I guess my question is, given that there are the other uses that might need to be reflected here would be, just looking at your email, car share and bike or e-scooter parking. Are you comfortable that we approve what's on the table now and it leaves us flexibility to look at some of the things which have been identified in the extra advice that you provided to us?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's a high parking demand in the area, as we already know with the Arlington estate.
Okay. Sounds like you're right. It's a good way forward. It's good.
The Deputy Mayor, I just want to add a few notes. Service lanes, normally we don't allow parking on it. Now we normally say, look, on our service lane is to service those properties, backing to it or fronting it. What happens in this case is because the yellow lines were not put in, so the businesses are occupying it as they are part of their business extension and obstructing businesses to operate their business. So this design or layout is basically to address both needs, access to properties for their servicing, trucks, stuff like that, and also allow some short stay parking so that a customer can come and go rather than someone just fully occupying the service lane for their one business. Thanks.
Any other questions on any of the traffic resolutions? If there are none, I over to Councillor Condi to officially introduce the report.
Thank you. So here we are again with another round of traffic resolutions. I know it's Councillor Matthews' favourite moment of the month when we get to do traffic resolutions. I just wanted to speak about 4 as I introduced the paper in particular. I would like to briefly speak about the one in Berempore on Luxford Street where we're removing a taxi stand, because one of the comments we had back from the public is asking about how the parking policy has been applied to this traffic resolution, which I think is a really great point. And I've seen some conversations on Twitter going on at the moment about the traffic resolutions we have out for consultation right now where people are asking the same questions. So I expect that we're going to see more of that coming back to us at this table. In this case, we have had that conversation with officers, and the taxi stand is not really required there, and we are going to do some further work to talk to the car share companies to see if this is an area where they might like to have a parking space. But normally we would look at something like short stay parking, but that's not actually needed in this area. So we have gone through and had a look at this, but we're going to talk to the car share companies going forward on that. But I think that this is an issue we're going to have coming up more and more as we look at anything that has to do when we're doing traffic resolutions that have to do with parking, that the public are going to expect us to be able to show that we've considered the new parking policy and that hierarchy. The one on Onslow Road, which we've had so much conversation about, I think we can all sympathise with the owner that it's a frustrating situation, and particularly when you've had access to something for a long time and had it taken away, that doesn't feel great. But that said, the officers have given us pretty clear advice that what's proposed here is the safest measures that we can put in place. And I think we also all acknowledge that in Wellington, our geography is challenging, and there are plenty of people in Wellington who probably have much worse access to their house than Paul Clark will be having at 151 here. So as much as that's unfortunate, I think we can still move forward on the safety grounds of supporting that traffic resolution. On Hopper Street, I just wanted to speak briefly about this because it kind of looks like we didn't get a lot of support for Hopper Street if you look at the feedback that we had. So I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that this was actually in response to a request from 6 businesses who are on the Hopper Street service lane, and that the officers contacted the leader of this petition just to touch base with them to make sure that this is something that they still wanted, since they hadn't actually submitted on this. And they responded that they're really keen to be getting on with this. That it's a really difficult issue that they're having with a particular business in the area dominating this parking space and making it really difficult for the other businesses in the area to be able to have parking for customers and access to all of their businesses. So I think even though if you look at it says we've got 4 no's and no yeses, actually this was a petition that came from 6 businesses who are still really supportive of this, and have been waiting for over a year for us to get this put in place. So I thought that context was really important. I think also addressing some of the feedback we had on Hopper Street, particularly about the residential parking, and I think it's really important to note that this is a service lane that we're talking about. So different roads in our city have different purposes. We talk about place and movement sometimes, but in this case this is a service lane. It is specifically designed to service businesses and function as a loading zone. So we have to, in this case, be giving priority to things like loading zones and short stay parking for those businesses, and not to long stay residential parking, as much as we might acknowledge that that's an issue for this person. So I just wanted to kind of put all that context out there. I think that there are a bunch of businesses here who are obviously incredibly frustrated and really struggling with one of their business neighbours, and that the proposal that the staff have put together is really going to really sort that out for these businesses, which is what we want. Isn't it, Mayor Foster? We want to make sure that our businesses have access to their businesses and that their customers have parking. So I think this is going to deliver that. The final one I wanted to speak about quickly was just Trinidad. Obviously we've had a lot of conversation there. I think staff have been great, and we've really done as much as is appropriate to improve the safety here and address the concerns we've had from Bernadette Stoll and other residents. It seems pretty clear that a roundabout would be a pretty expensive undertaking, and that it's just not justified in this case. And we have to be careful when we've got a limited amount of money to spend on road improvements, that we are making sure that we are spending that where we're going to get the greatest safety improvements, and that does not seem to be here. I just also wanted to note that officers have taken on board some concerns about the speeds that are going on in that street, and have undertaken to do some further work, looking at whether it would be useful to put in some reminder 50k signs, or possibly one of those flashing signs that reminds you whether you're doing the right speed, just to help with the speed management through there. So they are going to be following that up as well. And just as always, thank you to officers for all the work that goes on behind the scenes to bring this to our table, and to all the people who get involved to respond in public comment on traffic resolutions. They kind of are my favourite part of the month too, Councillor Matthews. And the people who can be bothered to take their time to respond to them in public are some of my favourite submitters. So it's, with that, I would like to ask someone to second this paper. It's a competition.
Because now we do love traffic resolutions. And what I think I actually do want to say about this is I think the parking policy is actually proving its worth, and thank you very much. I want to acknowledge the work of Councillor Condi in steering that through its development, its gestation and its final delivery, because what we've got now is a basis for actually making judgment calls when there are difficult and competing demands for road space. And I think it's shown its worth in situations like when a business asks for a P60, an unrestricted park to be turned into a P60, and we know that we do give priority to turnover parks that allow turnover so businesses can do well. And, when we remove a taxi stand to be unrestricted parking, we feel a sense of a little bit of, we're not actually doing what our parking policy says. And we keep that in the back of our mind that maybe that should be a car share, or actually with this particular case, it could be removed. A lot of parking might be removed to allow some cycleways to go in at some point. But I think it gives us a real framework for assessing the merits of the proposals that come to us, and for that reason it's really valuable. And Hopper Street, I mean, that's actually a classic example where when I looked into it and asked for some more advice. That's really, it's not a street where we're going to prioritise residential parking. So it makes perfect sense that in fact we look at it and try and optimise it for the businesses that are around. I think there could be a bit more work done on it, but clearly this is the first step to doing that, to optimising it. And above all else, we do need to be concerned with our streets being safe. So dotted yellow lines, we're putting in lots more of them, better bus stops, we're putting in a lot more of those. And the whole process, I think, is becoming more streamlined, and our thinking is becoming less emotional and more driven by a strategic view. So I think, congratulations to the staff, not just political leadership here, but a lot of this has come from our senior management right through to people like Soon and Charles who've done such a sterling job. And I always have a lot of confidence in your advice. And I know it comes from a lot of experience and, a real desire to get the very best outcome for us and the residents of the city. So I'm very happy to second this. I don't think I think there's any need really to, there you go.
Well said. Well said.
I was seeing we're into debate, I'll just,
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank officers too, because I'm sure there are lots of headaches in terms of these traffic and roading issues demand a huge amount of time, and you're never going to keep people happy all the time, so thank you for all the effort that goes into this. And just coming back to councillors who are saying that traffic resolutions are their favourite things, I was picturing the Sound of Music song where it talks about raindrops. I can't remember the other things, but for some they'll be adding in traffic resolutions, but everyone to their own.
Good one, Malcolm. I know, now I want to rewrite the lyrics. No.
So you'll lead, okay, we're voting on this then.
Yeah, no right of reply, thank you.
Thank you, officers. Thank you, councillors. We shall conclude our meeting with the closing Karakia.
Thank you, councillors.
Unihia,
Unihia, unihia, unihia. Ki te uru tapanui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua. Ihi aka takatu. Koia rā e ronga. Whakaria aki ki ronga. Kia wātia, aia rā kua wātia.